We're starting a shir, now the third shir in the halachas of the full and Shabbos and Yom Kippur, third out of 4 shiurim. Today we're going to be dealing with Siman Shin Lamed, that's in Hilchas Shabbos, and Siman Tov Reish Yud Zayin in Hilchas V'yom הכיפורים. They're both connected to Yeledes, and there is, since the halachas and both are connected to each other, so we will be dealing with both together. First we'll deal with Shin Lamed, then we'll deal with Tov Reish Yud Zayin. Shin Lamed that discusses Yeledes and Shabbos is divided into 3 parts. One is a Yeledes before she gives birth, we'll call right before she gives birth, a Yeledes right after she gives birth, and the din of the baby, the Vlad. We will only focus on the first 2. The Yeledes right before she gives birth, when she starts giving birth, and right after she gives birth. Although the Siman starts in Sif Aleph, we're going to start with Sif Gimel, then go back to Sif Aleph, because Sif Gimel is the one that determines what is the definition of a Yeledes. Alter Rebbe gives three definitions what the Yeledes is. One is Yesheves al Mashber. Yesheves al Mashber means, in today's terms, would be that she's laying on the bed where she gives birth. Now, in today's day and age, in hospitals, it's not the same as, it's not one bed, but there's a place where, before birth, where the woman is, when she has contractions, and then the moment of birth, sometimes it's moved to another birthing room. And she goes into the room before where labor, while contractions are happening, and then when she goes to, then she moves to the other room when she's ready to push the baby out. When it comes to דיני Yeledes, as it's relevant to Chilul Shabbos, the definition of Chilul Shabbos, so Yesheves al Mashber means that she is basically getting ready to give birth, which is when contractions happen. So obviously, we're not referring to when the first contraction happens, which could happen a week before birth or 2 days before birth, but from when the contractions get stronger. The definition of what contractions get stronger means, there is the doctors will tell the woman there's a certain amount you have to count, you have to time between the contractions, and that's when you know when to go to the hospital, when it hits a certain amount of time. And that is the moment which you would define as Yesheves al Mashber, which means the moment when the doctor defines that the contractions are already closer to giving birth than just the beginning of contractions. Sometimes the contractions become fake contractions. But we're talking about the real contractions. That's how you know when you count them, there's also ways.
Who says like that?
What's the definition of Yesheves al Mashber? Yesheves al Mashber means she's sitting on the bed and ready to give birth. I'm pulling it a little bit before that, to when the contractions start, which is the time that she's supposed to be laying on the bed to get ready to give birth. Which is when the contractions, when you have to go to the hospital. Which is the moment when she starts being in the category of a mesukenes.
Who says that? Who says that Yesheves al Mashber starts from when she has to go to the hospital?
Yesheves al Mashber means that she's laying on the bed, ready to give birth. So the ready to give birth, she doesn't lay down when she feels that she's pushing the baby out. She can't move at that point. She lays down before that when she gets ready to push the baby out, when she gets ready for giving the birth. So that starts when the point when the doctor says you have to be in the hospital. That point is different for each person. For people, some people it's faster, some people it's slower. We're going to get to details soon. Second siman that the Alter Rebbe gives for when a woman is considered a Yeledes for this purpose is when the blood is flowing out. Now, obviously, when the blood is there's blood flowing out after birth, but we're not discussing that. We're talking about blood flowing before birth. If a doctor sees a woman that's flowing blood before birth, he will put her into emergency, a lot of times into emergency surgery. because it's mamish sakanas nefashos. We're talking about that there is a somewhat of a flow of blood, that's bleeding that comes before giving birth. Today's poskim say the same thing applies when the water breaks. Because when the water breaks, also the doctor said that he doesn't have to give birth within a certain amount of time, and therefore that will be in the same category of shaisas dam, that it should be considered a yeledus. The third category is when she can't walk without her friends carrying her. Definition of carrying her doesn't mean literally carrying her, but holding her, that she can't walk from her own by her own strength. Now, these three definitions for yeledus is also pretty much the same time that nida begins, by yeledus. Nida doesn't begin when the first contraction, a week before birth. It begins when she's a yeledus for both categories. There's the dinim of what the definition of yeledus are not mentioned in the Alter Rebbe and Hilchos Nida. They're mentioned here.
You could say that there's two, like one of them is saying now it's the kever, one of them is saying now it's the sakana. So it could be that's a little bit different.
When contractions are yesheves al mashbid, psichas hakever, that's how the baby comes out. If there's no psichas hakever, the baby's not coming out. When the blood comes out, she's tamei anyways.
Correct.
And when she can't walk on her own, that also means that that all three. Yeah, but the psichas hakever already happened at that stage.
Is it possible to have psichas hakever but still not?
Yes, it's possible to have some women that will give birth very fast. And the doctors will tell them, don't wait till you do this, because they already have a chazak of giving birth in ambulances or in taxis or whatever else. And those people, they have a different dinim for them. Now, all this is when you have these simanim, so obviously she's in a sukenis, and that's it, you do whatever you have to do. Now, if you have a suffix on all of these, same thing, we already learned about suffix. Suffix b'koach nefesh, suffix chodesh b'sakana. There's also mechal and Shabbos and chodesh b'sakana. So there is the only time that the chodesh b'sakana that you're going to say no is if a doctor clearly says there's no sakana right now. Now, for some people, some women, they have lighter contractions and have to go to the hospital earlier. Some of them have historically much longer. They could be in contractions for many, many hours, and they don't have to go to the hospital right away. They can go to the hospital, send them back home, and say, come back in a day or two. And each one according to their, especially first birth is usually longer contractions than afterwards. So then there's women that are high risk, and the doctor tells them to come in even earlier to the hospital, or that high risk because of the current pregnancy or because previous pregnancies were also complicated. In each one, it depends on what the doctor says. Essentially, is these simonim are what we say that when you get to these simonim, she's for sure a chodesh b'sakana. When a doctor gives the specific instructions for this woman when to be in the hospital, it's the same thing. That's when she has to go to the hospital. That's when she is going to be mechalel, when she's going to be mechalel Shabbos. Now, because in a case of a suffix, it's a suffix which you could research by calling the doctor, by calling the doula. And that is not Chil Shabbos. Picking up a cell phone is not full Chil Shabbos. It could be a derabanan or something along those lines. So therefore, obviously it's better to pick up a phone before running right away to the doctor and finding out what to do. Interestingly, in the Chut Shani for Rav Nissen Karelitz, he points out that if he says that if it's Shabbos and now there's a guy available to take her to the hospital, whatever, a taxi is passing by the street, and in an hour, but the contractions are like not exactly at the point in time when it's already mechal and elas Shabbos. But if she's going to wait an hour till she knows it's going to be for sure mechal and Shabbos, she's not going to be able to have a guy waiting for her to take her to the hospital. So it's better she should go now with a guy, because going now with a guy is not the same level than waiting for later and getting her husband or calling Hatzalah or whatever it is, getting a yid to be mechal Shabbos for her. Even though technically you could say that the sakana didn't start yet, But because right before it, it's like you're not yet in Chodesh Sakana, but you're getting to that point. But by you going earlier, you're going to be in a situation where you're not going to be Mechal Shabbos. You're anyways going to have to be Mechal Shabbos on Shabbos. We're not talking about a half hour before Shkia of Motzei Shabbos, before it says. We're talking about much earlier than that. So it's better to do it in this way. So obviously today, if you order a taxi through an app or all the other things which are also much more kal than getting a yid to do it, it's much better. Now,
If you go early, the husband will be able to go.
the husband could go because he's needed there for the pchodim. That's a shayla if he could go there. Didn't think about it. Now, in Ktseis HaShulchan, in Siman Kuf Mem, Badei HaShulchan Sifkot and Gimel, he says that if contractions start on Erev Shabbos, close to when Shabbos starts, and so don't wait until Shabbos comes in, until she's for sure Sekenes, instead of Shabbos, you know there's going to be a birth within the next 12 hours, or you know she's going to need to go to the hospital for the next 3-4 hours. Now she can go out of Shabbos to the hospital, beheter gomur. If the same Ktseis HaShulchan also says, if she has to go to the hospital and she's scared to go by herself, for whatever reason it is, so he says that nir'e de mutar. Why? Because being scared, any form of fear to the baby, to the mother could cause fear, panic, at least stress to the mother when she's about to give birth, could create bigger problems. And he could go with it now. So obviously, if you have other similar things which could calm her down at this stage, which is lamashal, she needs the husband to go with her to the hospital, and you have to have a babysitter coming to the house, so you can't send the babysitter with a taxi because the babysitter is not loving Mechal Shabbos. But maybe you have a babysitter that's close by, and you have to notify the babysitter. So you make a sim before Shabbos. If you see three rings in a row from this number on your cell phone, then you know you have to walk over to my house. And you could do that also. That's one of the things that you could do beforehand. And he also continues in the same
Why 3 rings? Why not 1 ring?
You don't know. 1 ring could be a mistake call. You make it 3. You basically call, hang up.
On Shabbos it's probably not.
What? After, so make do a siman, 1 ring, whatever it is. Make a siman that the person should know. 3 is lav dafka. Now, same Ktseis HaShulchan also says that the ambulance is allowed to take someone to the hospital and come back because they're going to have to be to take care of another person who's sick on Shabbos maybe. So that's why you're able to do it. But a private car, he says, you have to leave in the. You drive a woman to there. You leave her where she is. Now, Alter Rebbe continues that to call likri chachma to bring somebody who's a professional from place to place. It's mutter even before she gets to the stage where she needs it. Why? So she's going to have to come from a certain place. So she needs 20 minutes to get over to you. So now, if you're going to wait till she actually needs it, you're killing 20 minutes. It's shehus ve'ikuv. That's the lashon of the Alter Rebbe. And therefore, the moment she margesh as ktsas, that she's starting to feel a little bit, and even if there's a suffix, you could already call chachamim l'makim, and based on that, you could also understand something else, that if a person is far away from a hospital, not everybody lives in New York where you're birthing hospitals within 10, 15 minutes from anybody's, 12 minutes from anybody's house. Some people live in rural places where the closest hospital could be 45 minutes away. And so again, you don't wait till that stage. You already go to shehuz ve'ikuv, so when it's already getting close to that stage, you could already start the process of going to the hospital. Whatever concludes in that seif, Gimel, that when the 9th month starts, toivli zor, it's a good thing to be careful to prepare everything from Erev Shabbos, so there'll be a minimal amount of Chilul Shabbos, and obviously that fits with what we already know, that Alter Rebbe holds that Shabbos is Tchuyas of Pikuach Nefesh, not Betela, and therefore you have to do your part, toivli zor, you have to do your shtadlos towards it, And there are those that say, and they claim it's Boduk Manusa, that preparing a suitcase before then, so Segula, you're not going to have to use it on Shabbos. Now, when you prepare a suitcase, and I'm anyways talking to Curling, glad not everybody has kids yet, so you prepare a suitcase before Shabbos, and so you don't only put there, like, there's two things that you need. You prepare before Shabbos, you put in the insurance cards, you could put in a cell phone charger, put in food, because you don't know what it's going to be. You don't know if you're going to end up in the hospital with Shabbos, which doesn't have food. Put in chocolates over there, so you can bribe whoever has to be bribed in the hospital to get the best attention that you need. Dollar bills you don't need. Today, who uses dollar bills? The only time you use dollar bills is to give out tzedakah, not of Yom Kippur. The rest you use a credit card. Now, put the cell phone in afterwards because you're going to need it to call people. Now, let's go back to, this is pretty much Siv Gimel. So you prepare whatever you need before Shabbos, and then obviously if the woman is able to take it with her, it's much easier. If the husband, if she can't, then the husband should take it out. If you have an Eruv, it's much easier because you don't have the issue of tiltul, etc. So all these things come into play at that point, where the difference, because the only issue there is over here is tiltul, shus, and tiltul.
The car itself is like a 1,000 every second.
Yeah, but you're not looking. The husband, he's not the one who's doing Mechal Shabbos. His whole role over there is because the wife has to be is scared, right? So it doesn't say anywhere that he should be on Mechal Shabbos.
If you're going to the car, you're doing Mechal Shabbos.
He's going to the car because his wife needs him in the car. But it doesn't mean that to go from the building to the car, he has to be the one carrying the suitcase. Right? If she's in the place that she could carry it, but now if you have a problem, B'chol. If she can't carry it, you carry it for it, it's not a problem. You don't have to be a Grace Chacham for it. Anyways, now I'll go back to Sif Aleph, because over there the halacha started, Yeledus, which we already, that's why we went to Sif Gimel first. Yeledus, which we defined what the Yeledus is considered a Chole Sheyesh B'Sakana, and Yemachal Shabbos. Yeledus is, even if she is Mapelas, and there's a whole discussion in Paiskin if it's even before 40 days or only after 40 days, she's still together. After 40 days, she's for sure considered a Yeledus. And the Chil of Shabbos is like Kol Ma Sheyitzricha, anything that she requires for the purpose of giving birth. The Mishnah Brura and the Pri Megadim say that if there's a better Meyaledus, which is further away, you could bring her even if from some outside the Tchum, because that's kol everything that she needs. If she needs if she says that she wants it to turn it out, let me use the example of lighting a candle, even though the Meyaledus does not feel that she needs a candle because she's going to be Yisiyashav Liba, she's going to be much calmer when she sees the candle. But still, you have to be Meshane B'chol Ma She'efshar. Yeah, that is the Alter Rebbe says you have to be Meshane B'chol Ma She'efshar. Now it's very important to point out, Alter Rebbe says Meshane B'chol Ma She'efshar is talking about regarding the things that you do for Ke'ev HaYeledus, not for Pikuach Nefesh. When the moment she's Mamish HaYeledus, then it's Pikuach Nefesh, you don't start looking for being Meshane anything. You do what you have to do. If you could be Meshane without doing any interruptions, it's a separate discussion. You go into if people see you, people don't see you, you're allowed to do Beshina or not. But you should, what it says, the Alter Rebbe says over here in Sifafat, Meshanim is talking about before she becomes Mamish a Geder of a Yeledus. And what's Nafkamin? Again, Meshanim is a place with Marshal, places there's no Eruv. Could you carry? What could you carry? If it's a place without any Eruv, so you can't carry anything other than what's needed specifically for birth. If it's before she does. If it's a place which has Eruv, then you could throw in a few other things which are muktzah in there, which are not mamish necessary specifically for the act of giving giving birth. Now, this hat that you could do for her whatever she needs only applies to things that she needs for birth. Something which is completely irrelevant to the birth. For example, sending messages to relatives, like, hire somebody to go drive around and send messages to relatives that she's going to the hospital to give birth. That is not part of things that she needs to give birth. However, this comes, we're going to go now into something. Are you allowed to send a message to a Rebbe through a goy on Shabbos for the Refuah Shlema? This was a massive war in Europe. I'm going into your territory, Rabbi Hamlet, because you usually deal with historical halachic disputes. You know what I'm talking about, the Belzer. The story of Maisa with somebody that sent a chole, sent a goy to bring a kvittel to the Belzer of on Shabbos. And there's given a ganze balagan. Is it Asur? Is it? Yeah, he used the yid. Sorry, not a goy. So in Pesach Advir, Siman Shin Vav Sivkot Zayin says that to hire a goy to tell a Rebbe about the matzah is mutter, but to send a yid, that's where the whole story in the Belzer happened. So the Marsham in the Bacharta B'chaim, Siman Pei Zayin, Eitz HaChaim Kuf Pei. And the same thing, the Beis Yitzchak and Erchaim Nun Zayin, completely osir. Completely osir. The Beis Yitzchak.
First of all,
Huh? We'll get to the chayla feeling calmer soon. The Beis Yitzchak says, not only you're not allowed to send a yid, not even send a goy. Not only not allowed to send a goy, you're not even ask a goy to send a goy. The shus is such a thing. The Shayla Meishiv in Shemesh Tlisach Elakav Siman Kuf Tzadik Daled. He responds, he argues in the Beis Yitzchak, and he tells the Beis Yitzchak, what are you doing? If he's a believer in the Rebbe, it's mamash sakana if he's not going to, it's pikuach nefesh, if he's not going to find out about it. So why are you oyser even through a goy? And this is all connected to this story. Originally, when the story exploded, it was basically the Shinover, the Divrei Yecheskel was the one who said it's completely asur. The Alesker was the one who tried to find a way to be matir. The Leif Sameach was the one who Leif Sameach, unrelated to this, was one who wrote that you could send a goy. Frekt is the Leif Sameach had an einikel by the name of Shas Shu is Yad Chanoich. And he says, my Zayda was matir. Someone asked this Yad Chanoich, Hai Tochen Zayda that Leif Sameach was matir, when you have a much simpler solution. The person asks, the chayla says, send the kvittel to the Rebbe. So tell him, okay, we did it. You don't have to actually do it. The whole point is to calm him down, right? So if you're going to tell, just tell him that it's fine. So he says, what's going to happen now? Everybody's dealing with Yidden. They're going to know that there's a heter. What's the heter is? The heter is to lie to a sick person. Comes a sick person, if he's going to hear this sort of thing, he's going to ask somebody to ask it, and if he's going to find out that this guy's relying on the heter and lying to him, a lot more. So Yotzes Cholev said you're causing the person to get even sicker. And send a goit. I just dealt in short what happened with this machlekes. Based on this, there was a discussion in a later poskim if you're allowed to send a fax to a rebbe with a bakoshas bracha. When it comes to shaila, if one of the achronim discusses if one of the poskim deal with this, why do you have to send it? Why do you have to tell the rebbe? He probably knows your matzav. You don't have to tell him. It goes back to it. The chayla needs to know that you told him. But, yeah, but then you have another, then there's another act. Now I can't remember who the other person, I didn't mark it by me, that discussed, are you allowed to mail it for the yid who's a chayla to send a kvittel to the Rebbe Fashteich? It's for him, it's mutter. How is the Rebbe going to open it? Just sending a telegram or something. For the Rebbe, it's Chil Shabbos. It's not going to help anything. You only solved half of the problem. Yeah, that's left. It was left with a question that. Azaz is Gibliba.
Once you sent it.
Once you sent it, yes. Once you sent it, it's already. Machshav, it's also started with Mendel. You didn't even have to write anything. Yep, this is Sif Alpha. Let's go to Sif Daled. This is pretty much, Sif Aleph Beis Gimel discusses the dinim of a yoledus up to the point that she gives birth. Sif Dalet starts after she gives birth. What's the definition after the woman gives birth? So after giving birth, the first 3 days, she's considered a chole sheyesh ba sakana. Why? Because a voreha misparkim or misaraskim, she just gave birth, she just pushed the baby out, all her inner organs are in disarray, and the body has to recover, at least start to recover from the process of birth. Obviously, you start counting the 3 days from the moment of birth, not from the moment of the contractions. Because it could end up the woman has contractions for a week. She already loses the 3 and the 7 before she even starts. We start from the moment of birth. Now, when a woman gives birth, this is a C-section. So okay, you can have a svare faket. There's no evora misparkim. They just cut her up. They took the baby out. There's no evora misparkim. Then for this punkt fakert. A woman who goes through surgery, sometimes it's more than 3 days till the body recovers from it. It could be a week. But then the doctor is going to tell you to what point she's a chole sheyesh b'sakana. The 3 days is talking about natural birth, everything went normal. That you have the 3 days. And even then, if a doctor says that she needs more time, it was a very traumatic birth, so then there is the doctors will say sometimes that she's a chole sheyesh b'sakana for a little bit longer than that. That's what Shmir Shabbos Kilchasa says, that by a C-section it's at least 3 days. Not the 3 days is the minimum, not when it comes to C-section. So the regular birth, 3 days. But Shmir Shabbos Kilchasa takes the approach, 3 days is the minimum. Chacham says 3 days is like the standard. But you have extreme situations, you have other situations where it's going to be more than 3 days. And your Mechal Shabbos for her, even if she says that she doesn't need. But her friends say that she does need. If she says she needs for sure. If she says she doesn't need, and her friend says that she does need something specific, you're Mechal Shabbos. Just remember this, because this is where it's different from Hilchos Yom Kippur. We're going to get to it later about the Chavrei Sel. If she and her friends both say that she does not need, or they don't say anything at all, so or they don't say that she needs, so Nishma Shabbos says that you're not Mechal Shabbos for such a woman. It's mashma a little bit from the Alter Rebbe also, because the Alter Rebbe says if she says she needs, or she says she does not need, but her friends say that she does need. What happens if she and her friends say that she does not need, or they don't clearly say that she needs? At that point, it's mashma from the Alter Rebbe that you're not mechal Shabbos. And in today's day and age, that there is more medical knowledge and the person would know what the situation is. Sometimes taka true that even within 3 days, she's not going to need something. Some women will recover faster, and some women will recover longer. So with the medical information, the 3 days, you could look at it as an average. It's not a set in stone, exactly 3 days. If it's,
Someone writes that the average,
I'm telling you that it's average. What do you mean if someone writes it's an average? No, the Alter Rebbe says it's Gimel Yomim, not Meisleis, right? We're going to get to it later. Because it's a din in Gemara, what Gimel Yomim is. Right, but Gimel Yomim is, but if it's more than Gimel Yomim, if the doctor says it's Chole Sheyesh b'sakana, or Safek Sheyesh b'sakana, then...
Not less than Gimel Yomim.
What I'm saying, but if she says she doesn't need, and the Chavera says she doesn't need, and the doctor says she doesn't need, you Mechal Shabbos on her? No, it doesn't say anything like that in the Shulchan Aruch. It doesn't say such a thing about Chilul Shabbos. If she says she doesn't need, and the doctor says she doesn't need, and the thing, you'll be a chacham and say, no, she dafka does need. The answer is no. That's what the Alter Rebbe says, the condition of a Chavrei Sel. Mashenk in Hilchos Yom Kippur, where the Alter Rebbe doesn't mention it.
You know, Chole Sheyesh b'sakana, the Alter Rebbe writes in what I should have it's the only thing that they need.
But if she doesn't say, she says she does not need it. When do you force them?
I'm saying, anyway,
You have to force. Sometimes you have to force, right? In Tafresh Zayin, you force a woman to eat in the first 3 days. It's different than here. Because something that she needs. She needs to eat. Over here, we're talking about specific actions. Specific actions that lav dafka she needs. Who says that she needs specific actions? The Ksiris HaShulchan, the same Siman Kuf Mem in Badi HaShulchan Sifkot and Daled, brings to the Mishnah Brura another point, that if not only it's if her friends say that she needs and she says she doesn't need, but even if her friends don't say she specifically needs it, but they say this is something which every woman needs to be done during this time, it's also the same thing. It means the Chavedas can't be doctors and say, you must do it this way, and you can't do it any other way. But they could say, we know that other women who gave birth were in the same situation, and they did it. So therefore, in such a case, you still do it. If it's a suffix, obviously, if you need something or you don't need something, so you are mechal Shabbos. Why? Because chodesh b'sakana by a suffix, you are mechal Shabbos without any questions, and you do whatever you do during weekdays. You do for this during these 3 days. If Shabbos falls out in these 3 days. However, if a doctor clearly says she does not need, you don't do it. So Alter Rebbe says over here, right? The doctor clearly says you don't need it, you don't do it. So what does it mean if a doctor says you clearly don't need? The doctor says it for 3 days. She doesn't need 3 days. She needs only 2 days. She's a strong person. So between the end of the 3rd day and the end of the 7th day is the second category, where she's like somewhere between the chodesh yesh b'sakana and chodesh ein b'sakana. She's not quite a chodesh yesh b'sakana. She's not quite out of sakana. So over there, if she clearly says that she does not need it, you're not mechal Shabbos for her, even if her friends come and say that she does need it. However, if a doctor or a chachama say that you need it, you are mechal Shabbos, even if she clearly says that she's not needed. If she does not say clearly, I don't need, she just says, I don't know. And the friends are with her say, we also don't know if she needs it or not. Nobody says clearly we don't need it. There's no clarity. Then you are mechal Shabbos. And if she says that it's needed and her friends say it's not needed, so we already know you are mechal because we know the rule of leiv yedeya moras nafshay. And from the end of 7 to the end of 30, from the end of 7 to the end of 30, it's a chole she'ein bo sakana, unless a doctor says fakert, and you're not mechal Shabbos even if she says that it's needed, except for one exception to the rule, which is warming up, turning on the steam in the house, which over there, because having a cold house is dangerous even for a chole she'ein bo sakana, and therefore that's something that you do even between the 7th day and the 30th day. The Alter Rebbe says here, and in Hilchos Yom Kippur, that these 3 days are counted not me'es la'es. It's not 72 hours from the moment of birth. It's rather specifically days. So, if she gives birth close to the end of the day, on let's say on a Wednesday, so Wednesday will be day 1. And Thursday will be day 2, and Friday will be day 3, and Shabbos she's already going to be in the 4 to 7 category. Just by the way, in Shuas Tzemach Tzedek, Siman Samach Gimel, I'm not going to get into it now, but over there, you get to it in the next year, the Tzemach Tzedek is a matir regarding Yom Kippur for a Yeledes, even after the 3 and 7 days are officially over, to eat on Yom Kippur, with shiurim, etc., with a rakov v'anuga. Now, if a woman gives birth on Bein HaShmoshes, the Badei HaShulchan in Sifkot and Ches says that we go l'kula. That means we don't count it as the end of the previous day, we rather count it as the beginning of the next day. So that becomes the beginning of day 1 rather than the end of day 1. And he brings to the Mishnah Brura, there's a lot of shittas which hold that you're a mechashav me'es la'es, and therefore, at least for this, you could rely for Bein HaShmoshes, you're going to attach that Bein HaShmoshes itself is a suffix. Maybe it's already the next day. Plus the fact that enough people say me'es la'es 3 times me'es la'es, between the two together, you could say that it's mutter to go to count it, to be makel, and to say that you count as day 1 is going to be the next day, not the first day. And from that, this is pretty much the pointers that I want to discuss in Siman Shin Lamed. So now I'm going to move to Hilchos Yom Kippur. Hilchos Yom Kippur in Tafresh Yud Zayin, Tafresh Yud Ches. Tafresh Yud Zayin that we're going to discuss today. Tafresh Yud Ches we're not going to discuss today. Tafresh Yud Zayin is דיני Mu'beres, Meinekes, and Yiledis. In Hilchos Shabbos it starts from Chole and then it ends with Mu'beres. In Yom Kippur it goes fakert, so it just works out. We're finishing Hilchos Shabbos with Mu'beres. We'll start Hilchos Yom Kippur with the same Mu'beres, which are connected one to another. The first thing Alter Rebbe starts by saying is Mu'beres and the Meinekes after 24 months is their Mis'anois u'Mashlimos. They fast the full day, full Yom Kippur. No breaking the fast in the middle. That is the starting point of the halachas. It's the opening halachas for Chole and for everything else, and for Mu'beres and Meinekes. First halacha mentioned is they fast. Now afterwards you have all the exceptions to the rule, but the first thing to know is they do fast. Sif Beis and Gimel discusses somebody who smells food on Mu'beres that smelled something, and she wants to eat it. We got a big taiva to eat it. First thing you do is you tell us Yom Kippur. See, maybe the baby's going to calm down. By the way, the machlekes are showing them if over here it's talking about for the baby or for the woman. What's the yesod of the heter that is discussed over here? Is it because you want to save the? If it's because you have a chashash that the baby's going to come out early and it's going to die, then the baby lavdaf is considered a living being. So there's no reason to do Chal Shabbos, and there's no reason to eat for it. But if it's for the woman, it's for sure not. But the Maisa, we don't go through these discussions. We don't make the definition that a pregnant woman, when she's smelling something and she has this urgent craving and the world is coming to an end, that she has to eat something, they're going to start making a chkira if the...
Because the baby will come out, it's sakana for her.
Sakana for her. But what happens if it's not sakana for her, it's a sakana for the baby?
I've never said that poison is sakana for her. Anything is sakana for the baby is sakana for her.
Yeah. Now, what happens if it's only a sakana for the baby, not a sakana for her? Or if it's only sakana for her, not for the baby?
Well, it sounds like...
It sounds like it's mainly, but I'm saying, well, what's the reason for it? Because the baby's going to die?
It sounds like it's only issue because it's sakana for her.
Right. What I'm saying is, our Rishonim, which should go into a discussion about why it's a sakana for the baby. Not going into it now, just pointing it out to you. With Poil, we don't go these chiras when it comes to these mices and it comes to Mu'beres. We look at it as a sakana. The moment of birth is like she becomes in the gather of cheshish b'sakana, and something could do to it. So if the first thing you tell her it's Yom Kippur, she doesn't come down and she says she needs to eat, she must eat, or you see that her face is changing colors, she's becoming pale or whatever it is, and she does not say she needs to eat. So then there's 4 stages over here. First, you dip like a shmata into the sauce of this thing that's cooking, and you give it to her. See if it calms down. If it doesn't help, then you give the actual sauce. If the actual sauce does, and you give pachis mikashir, the Alter Rebbe adds by roitiv, pachis mikashir. If that doesn't help, then you give the actual food, also pachis mikashir, until tisyashiv daita. The question that comes up over here is, why are we doing, if you're ready, there's no difference in the Isur, Yom Kippur, whether you're drinking or you're eating, whether you're eating sauce or you're eating flesh. Why is it that we start, first you start with Roitev, and you do Pachis Mikashir, then you move to Oichel, do Pachis Mikashir. Bechlal, why you need Pachis?
It's easier to do pachis mikashir with rate.
Right. So what we're saying is that, but the Isser is the same. If she's going to need to eat, so start with the food and get it over with. So let's put this Alter Rebbe aside for a second and let's move to a totally different topic. The Rambam and Hilchos Macholis Asuros. First, Rambam and Hilchos Yom Kippur. Rambam in it's not Hilchos Yom Kippur, it's Hilchos Shvus HaSaser, but yeah, the halachas of Yom Kippur in Perek Beis Halacha Tes. It over there discusses that the woman in Mu'beres which smelled food, you remind her that it's Yom Kippur. If a das wasn't Nisyashiv, then you feed her, even nevelis or shkotzim. That's the lashon of the Rambam. The Rambam doesn't say you go with dipping and then roitev and then the actual thing. The Rambam doesn't say pachas mekashir. The Rambam only says if you tell it's Yom Kippur, if not, you feed the whole thing. In Hilchas Macholos Asuros, Perik Yudalad Alocha Yudalad, regarding a muberes which smells something treif, over there, the Rambam says first, you try that you should just eat the sauce. Then you should eat the actual chazer, if it doesn't come down. Yeah, but in Hilchas Yom Kippur, the Alter Rebbe doesn't say that, and the Rambam doesn't say such a thing. Friends, why? It should be the same thing. Why is one? Why in Hilchas Yom Kippur, Hilchas Shvitas Asur, the Rambam does not say that you go min hakal and then hakavod. Hilchas Macholos Asuros he does. Hilchas Macholos Asuros is based on the Gemara. The Gemara in Yuma says that you are going min hakal hakavod. Why Hilchas Yom Kippur doesn't say it? So there's two ways of looking at it. Either that the Rambam, three ways. Either that the Rambam is relying on what's written elsewhere.
Usually I revise the text.
Exactly. So that's the problem. The first to say that the Rambam relies on what's written, that in Hilchas Shvitas Asur he's relying on what he's going to write in Hilchas Macholos Asuros, doesn't work because it's further. It only goes backwards. What happens to be the Noida B'Yehuda does say a combination. He says that the Rambam is not relying on what's going to be later. The Rambam in each place discusses what's relevant to here. In Hilchas Yom Kippur, the Rambam is not going into discussions how to eat. The Rambam is telling you a thing. There is somebody wants to eat chazer, wants to eat even the velas of shkatzim, muberes hericha. So tell her it's Yom Kippur. If you don't tell her it's Yom Kippur, then she could eat nevelos ushkatzim. How could she eat nevelos ushkatzim is not relevant to discussion of Yom Kippur. It's relevant to discussion of Macholos Asuros. So you look over there when you get to there, and you'll figure out what you're going to do. But again, that logic doesn't make sense. That the Rambam is going to rely on something which he's going to write, later. Shas Tshuvas Chesed LaAvram Tanina Erechaim Siman Samach Zayin. The Noida B'Yehuda is in Kama Erechaim Siman Lamed Vov. The Chesed LaAvram, what we're discussing now, to Avram Ta'oimim in Tanyona Erechaim Siman Samach Zayin, says that the Rambam did it intentionally. There's a specific reason why the Rambam in Hilchas Yom Kippur does not mention anything, and in Hilchas Macholos Asuros he does mention it, because in Yom Kippur, it's a din of pikuach nefesh. Once you're matir the eating, then any other issur which is connected to this eating falls by the wayside. Like we saw in Hilchas Shabbos regarding Bishul Akum, the concept that the guy cooks it, it's Bishul Akum, fine, that's on the side. But over here he says that once the Rambam is determined, once it becomes, if it's Yom Kippur, once she's eating, the specifics don't really make a difference anymore. Is it Macholos Asuros, is it Macholos Ksheres, is it Kashir, is it not Kashir, is it you're starting with the Roitev, you're not starting with the Roitev. But Macholos Asuros, you don't have a global heter to eat it. You're discussing about eating Macholos Asuros. And in such a case, the whole discussion has to be according to the Gemara. You start with akal akal.
I don't get what you're saying.
On Yom Kippur, the person muberes ericha was an afkamina between the two explanations.
No, I don't get what you're saying.
He says that the reason that the Rambam, according to Noida B'Yehuda, even according to the Rambam, on Yom Kippur, you have to start with akal akal. First with the roitev, then with the basar. According to Chesed LaAvram, no, the Rambam specifically did not mention it in Yom Kippur because the Rambam completely disregards it. There's two isurim over here. Once the isur achila is put to the side, the other isurim any other isur is also put to the side. Mashiach and Hilchas Macholos Asuros, the isur is not put to the side, so this is not put to the side either. Now, I just want to point out that to go a little bit more into this. It's also pikuach nefesh. But in Yom Kippur, the first isur is isur achila. Once you already eliminated the isur achila, He says, the Pikuach Nefesh already cancelled one Isser. At that point, when it cancelled that Isser, that general Isser of Achila, it cancelled any Isurim which are attached to this Achila. Any secondary Isurim which come together with this are cancelled together with the main Isser. The main Isser is Tanas Nafshi Sechet, can't eat. Any other Isser which comes attached to it, you can't, you don't have to do. L'chayra, you could say that the reason why the Rambam would hold by Pikuach Nefesh, according to the Chesed Lavram, by Yom Kippur, that you don't need to go to anything. Once it's mutter, it's because the Rambam, like we discussed in the previous shiurim, he holds that Pikuach Nefesh and Shabbos is given is hutro. Kivan hutro is hutro. And therefore, the same logic would apply also in Hilchos Yom Kippur, that once the Isser Achila is moved to the wayside, everything else is mutter also. Mashiach, according to the Alter Rebbe and the Rishonim, which hold there's tchuya and it's not hutra. Therefore, just the mere fact that one Isser is mutter doesn't mean that the whole Torah got cancelled as a package deal. So therefore, you would still have to do it. And that's where the Alter Rebbe goes and says, halacha, that has to be sucking the roite first, tasting it from the shmata or whatever it is, from the finger, and then actual roitev and pachis mekashir, and then the actual meat. And according to that, it makes sense why the Alter Rebbe writes it over here, even by roitev, that you have to do pachis mekashir. Because ultimately, the whole idea was nitche, it was put to the side. So if it's put to the side, you still don't go to the other extreme at the moment that you're able to do it. But now let's go into the understanding for a moment. What is the reason why by Machalas Asuros we go hakal and then hakavod? Let's go according to Shittas Rambam before we get to Yom Kippur. By Shittas Rambam, why by Machalas Asuros the Gemara says, the Rambam brings to the Gemara, why does the Gemara say that first taste the water that was that the chazer was cooked in it, and then taste the actual chazer? So you go into the whole discussion. You could say it's a shaylev, it's a roitev, shel basar. The Rambam is the mechaber. The same the mechaber follows the shit of the Rambam, but the tam keker, there's no tam keker. If the roitev is considered, yeah, I'm saying, but the roitev, tafshel shel basar, the mechaber doesn't make you fleshik, right? It's only a tam, has no mamashos. So it has no mamashos, right? Pask is tam ke'ikar, yeah, but it's a real tam. If something is cooked, tafshel shel basar, it's not fatty. All it has is you're not eating the actual basar. It does not make you fleshik, right? The simple reason is, just according to logic, just because you have a heter to eat machalas asuros doesn't mean you have to go straight and have the biggest enjoyment. As they say, you have to eat chazer, don't suck the bones, right? So that's a little bit gesagt. So the same thing with the machalas asuros. You start with the isur. The fact is, you have to be sad that Torah says v'chaybam, and therefore you have to violate it to be able to live for whatever reason it is. So start with the lightest, start with the liquid, then go the liquid in which it was cooked, then go into something which doesn't have mamashas, and then go to something which is mamashas. Understand? Now you look at it in Yom Kippur, you can say the same logic also. On Yom Kippur, you have ta'anos nafshi seichem. So you have to eat on Yom Kippur, for whatever reason is that you have to eat on Yom Kippur. So eat, but don't make a feast out of it. Don't start, so you start with something, with tasting the right, then you go to more than that, and then you go to more than that. Because we're not talking mamash, the muberes shehericha, it's not the same thing as the chole sheish v'sakana from before Yom Kippur. Ta'anos nafshi seichem is still there. The fact that you have a heter to violate it, because it was nitche, doesn't mean that you have to have the full spectrum of enjoyment and go straight to the steak. You can have the liquid that's around the steak. And Alter Rebbe then continues that not only a muberes, but any other person that smells food and his face is changing colors, that you feed him just like you feed the muberes, which means the same order. First you start with the sucking on the sauce, and then the actual sauce, and then and then the meat, etc., etc. But here's where the difference is between this person who smells and the mu'beres that smells. A person who smells, if he says that he needs it, but his face does not show any change, so we don't give it to him. Now, if it's a person who's a chole, and not somebody who's getting taivas from smelling food, then you feed him right away whatever he needs and as much as he needs. The only reason, Alter Rebbe explains, the only reason why by somebody who smells food and has a taiva, we start with roitiv over here, he says, because maybe he's going to calm down. He's going to calm down first from that. And then we're not going to have to go further. And if the roifim say that he needs to eat, you give as much as the roifim say that he needs to eat. If the sick person says that he needs to eat, you give him to eat until he says, I had enough, I am full. And even here, also we go, pachis mekashir, we don't jump right away to have a full meal. Now, if you see in this whole Siman, Tafrashut Zayin, it's all talking about machilim oisem, which means a whole discussion about somebody else feeding him. The interesting Chasam Sofer, Chuvas, Even Ezer Chelik Beis, Siman Pei Beis. The reason why the Shulchan Aruch, not talking about Alter Rebbe, the Chlal, the reason why the Shulchan Aruch says machilim is because it's a din for us, for the people who are not sick, for the people who are dealing with the sick people. That for us, we don't have to believe the sick person. And therefore we don't have a heter to feed him. Sometimes we have an obligation to feed him. But if the person himself knows his matzah and he decides to eat on himself, that's something else. That's a different din. The Rachel Darach Einayim, he says. It's not over. If he feels that he needs it and he breaks his fast, then even in cases where the Shulchan Aruch says ein ma'achilin noisei, if he himself decides to eat, it's not an isser. Now, the one of the most common questions that come up that is connected a little bit to this of having less hanoah and more hanoah, I'm just going to point it out now, even though it's not really connected to the Siman, is when there is bitter medicines that are swallowed. So you have a whole discussion. There's one shitta which says that you're not supposed to do it. Even that is supposed to be even that you should not do on Yom Tov, but on Yom Kippur. But if you look in the Yeshua's Yaakov Siman Tov Rishut Beis, and Ksaf Sefer Siman Kuf Yud Aleph, and the Eretz Tzvi Siman Pei Ches, that you are allowed on Yom Kippur to swallow, not chew, to swallow bitter medicines that are needed l'refuah. Even obviously we're talking about a chayla she'ein boi sakana, because there's no hanas cheich, there's no enjoyment in the mouth from eating them.
Who says you're not allowed?
I forgot who says you're not allowed. I didn't write them down. Look in Shona Metzion Balach, I think he brings them. He brings some of these ones. The Eretz Tzvi says even that if it's less than a shear, matoiv, because then you have two reasons. Sai spochus mekashir, sai it's not even though it's derech achila, it's not actual achila because it's no hanas cheich. In Seif Dalet. Now we go to
Even on Shabbos you can't swallow. Even on Shabbos you can't swallow food.
Cannot?
Yeah. Unless the Chel Shem is Sakana, unless Chol.
I'm saying over here we're talking about the same rules. Over here it doesn't have to repeat to you what's already written in the Shabbos. Now a Sif Daled and Sif Hey is things that we already know from Siman Shin Lamed, or at least we think we know, because it's the same similar things. They're going to point out some differences. A Yeledes, the first 3 days should not fast at all. She's a Geder Chedesh B'Sakana. Even if she says she does not need, you still feed her, Val Karcha if need be, but you still do Pachis Mekashir. From the 3rd day to the 7th day, if she says that she needs, you feed her Pachis Mekashir. Even if the doctors and Chavriseo say she does not need. From after the 7th day onwards, then she's considered Chedesh Shem B'Sakana, and therefore you do not feed her. So if she says that she needs to eat because of Tzar Leida, then you don't feed her. If she says that she has to eat because of tsar choili, then you do feed her rather than thing. Over here, you have two differences from Siman Shin Lamed. In this sif, you have two differences. The first difference is, when it comes to Chilul Shabbos, it says if a Yeledis, the first 3 days, she says she does not need. So at least you have to have that her friends should say that it is needed. And then if the doctors, or that the doctor says that it's needed, and if the doctors and the friends and them say you don't need, then you're not Mechal Shabbos. Over here, the Alter Rebbe doesn't discuss it b'chlal. Over here, even if she says that she does not need in the first 3 days, the Alter Rebbe doesn't say chavrisel, roifim, nothing. Even if she says she does not need the first 3 days, you still feed her. Why? Because by the case of Chilul Shabbos, like I mentioned before, it's a question whether this action is needed or not. Over here in Yom Kippur, there's no question that the woman has to eat. So it's not a shaila that you have to ask a roifin. The Chachamim said, we know a person has to eat. The Chachamim said that you let us during 3 days have to eat. So there's nothing, it's not a question for the doctors if we need a specific action or not. It's not something that Chavrisa have to determine if she needs something or not. It's very simple. If she's within the first 3 days, even if she says she doesn't have to eat, you force feed her. That's the first difference. Second thing. In Siman Shin Lamed, if a doctor says that she does not need this specific action, then we listen to the doctor. Over here it's not mentioned what happens if the doctor doesn't say that. Why? For the same reason. Chachamim were keveh that you feed, and that's it. In Sif Hey, that's the two differences over here. But the doctors and Matchav Yisrael. The Sif Hey again discusses that it's not Meis Le'es. Rather, it's like we mentioned before, that it's part of a day is counted as day one, and from after 3 days until the end of the 7th day, the Alter Rebbe says in the same sif over here, if she does not say anything or she says she does not know, you do feed her. That's in the Geder of a suffix. Unless her friends and the doctors clearly say she does not need. Because then you don't feed her unless she says tzricha ani. And with that, this is the end of Siman Tov Reish Yud Zayin, and we have one more shir on Siman Tov Reish Yud Ches, and on the Tzemach Tzedek that's in the book.